Alcohol may be man's worst enemy, but the Bible says love your enemy. And while I by no means love alcohol and do not encourage the use of alcohol in excess, I realize that there are many people who live suffering from the disease of alcohol addiction, or may not be addicted but binge drink upon occasion, and in either case there is pain and suffering afterwards. My hope is that this talk will reduce some of that pain. This is Laureano Andrade Vicenty, MD, and you're watching my health literacy and harm reduction series regarding alcohol use and hangovers. Here's a disclaimer so that you don't try to blame me if you end up drinking too much. And let's just say up front that I have no relevant financial disclosures to make, and I have no financial interest in any drugs or products that I talk to you about today in terms of hangover remedies or reducing harm. The best thing you can do for yourself in this situation is to not drink. Over the long term, it decreases your total lifespan and can cause liver failure, heart disease, pancreatitis, wasting of the brain tissue, stomach ulcers, and possibly sudden death from a variety of health complications and causes. And the only one that I have a way of potentially reducing of all of those risk factors and outcomes is stomach ulcers. With that said, though, I recognize that there are people who are addicted to this substance, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't help them otherwise live comfortably as they try to rid themselves of this disease of addiction. Not to mention, I know there's some college kids out there always looking for a way to be more productive on that Sunday after they did that keg stand Saturday night football party. So this will help you out too. And there are 6 cardinal undesirable effects that I'm going to center this talk over and how to reduce or prevent them. And that is elevated stomach acid in your stomach, dehydration, starvation, nausea and vomiting, headaches, and poor sleep. And I hope that you stick around until the end because I'm going to be discussing many hangover remedies that actually work. And I'll give you a summary at the end of what those remedies are. So let's start with stomach acid. Our stomachs normally produce acid to help digest the food we eat. Alcohol, however, stimulates the stomach to secrete more acid than usual, disrupting the pH balance or the balance of acid and bases in our stomach, which can lead to an ulcer formation and stomach pain. When stomach acid is too highly concentrated in your stomach, this pain often feels like a burning or a gnawing sensation in your stomach. You can reduce the risk of developing ulcers from drinking by taking more calcium carbonate tablets before and during drinking, and even after. If you're otherwise healthy, you just follow the dosing on the bottle, and that should be appropriate and help reduce the risk of forming an ulcer. Calcium carbonate has a trade name of things like Tums or Roloids. It would also be wise for you to take a calcium carbonate tablet when you wake up in the morning, because it will, again, lower the acid content of your stomach. And it will also protect your throat and esophagus from acid burns as you hurl last night's tequila into your toilet bowl. So basically what it's doing is it's a base. You have acids and you have bases. A base will raise the pH and acid will lower the pH. The calcium carbonate acts like a base to raise the pH to, when you are drinking, a more normal level for the human body. So taking those calcium carbonate pills can protect your stomach from ulcers. We move on to dehydration. So if you've ever been to your local pub and you went to the restroom after a few drinks, you probably realize that you are not the only person at the restroom. Hell, it seems like everyone at the bar is at the restroom. Even though you only drank 4 beers, you swear you're urinating 8. Well, they're the reason for that, and it's not by chance. It turns out that beer, liquor, any type of ethanol, any type of alcohol, and coincidentally coffee as well, acts as a diuretic. And what a diuretic does is it increases urine production and excretion. And they do so by blocking the release of a hormone called antidiuretic hormone. So you block something that causes a blocking of diuresis, then you get the loss of water or diuresis. And the amount of water that you lose is much more than the amount of volume you take in through the beer or liquor. So that's why it seems like, although you only drank 4 beers, you're urinating 8. That's because you probably are urinating close to 8 beers in terms of volume. So what can you do to reduce harm here? If you have a home or a place where you can store ingredients, you probably have all the ingredients in your cupboard to make a perfect electrolyte solution for the adult human body that you can take either during or after drinking. Perhaps after a night of heavy drinking, you would want to pound out this entire recipe before bed, and maybe more, depending on how much you drank that night. So the recipe is this. You take 6 teaspoons of sugar, half a teaspoon of salt, and about 32 ounces of water, which is approximately 2 standard sized water bottles, and you mix it all together and you drink it. So why use this solution and not water? It really comes down to the biology of our intestines, our guts, how we absorb food and drinking, and water rather, into our bodies. The mechanism by which our bodies take up salt from the gut requires the presence of glucose, aka sugar. If one or the other isn't present, you don't get absorption of either. So you need both, and that's why this solution is so important for rehydration. So just to orient you to this figure, on the brown side here we have the intestine, the inside of the intestine. We have the cells that line the intestine, and then we have the blood. And what I'm trying to depict here for you is that there is this protein transporter called SGLT1. And here's glucose, here's the salt, aka sodium. And for them to get into the cell and into the blood and into our bodies from the water and salty food you eat, they both have to be present because they both have to sort of have a lock and key with this protein before that protein lets them both pass. It's sort of like you have 2 locks on a door and you need both the keys to get yourself inside, to open that door and get yourself inside your home. And that's the same thing happening here. Both sodium or salt and glucose need to be present in the stomach and in the intestine, stomach to the intestines, to get that into the body. And when you take this into consideration, and also consider the fact that when most people are hungover, the most they can manage when they wake up out of their bed or when they're getting into bed is to gulp down some water and then go back to bed. This solution really is a no-brainer in terms of what you should use as the fluid replenishment. Now, I know most of you just drink water when you get home and you seem to be fine. So what's that? Well, 1, you're probably prolonging your hungover state by doing that. But 2, it's because at some point you're eating food with water that you're drinking, so that gives you the sugars that you need in the form of carbohydrates, or maybe you're just eating Skittles, I don't know, which then can be broken down in the intestines to a sugar and allow you to absorb the salts and help you get back to that normal state of being, help you get out of that hangover state. But anyway, this is the simple electrolyte solution that if you drink can help alleviate your hangovers sooner. By fixing the dehydration and the electrolyte problems that you probably have from losing all of it from urinating way too much when you drink. This solution also works great when you're vomiting or you have diarrhea. And let me just say, this isn't a solution for an adult, not a child. As an aside, and I'll talk about this later again, if you always wake up with a dry mouth after drinking, or even when you're not drinking, or dry mouth and throat, the air you breathe is probably dry. So buying a room humidifier could make your sleep much more comfortable, especially when you dehydrate yourself by drinking. We move on. Now I have a question for you all. How do you know when you're properly hydrated? Do you know? One way you can tell that is quick, easy, and usually pretty accurate is checking your color of your urine in a healthy patient. A normally hydrated patient, they usually have a light yellow color, while you have mild dehydration, usually a darker yellow, and a severe or very deep dehydration is even darker yellow-brown. And in the case of alcohol, when you're drunk or drinking, unfortunately though, this becomes unreliable because the alcohol is making you lose all the water in your urine regardless of your hydration state. If you have any water in your body and you get drunk, that alcohol will prevent you from conserving that water and make you lose it all in your urine. So that's why your urine seems very clear or light yellow when you are drunk. So it won't work while you're drunk, this technique for telling how hydrated you are, but it will work when you are hungover. So you can use this to say, hey, I'm waking up, I see my urine is very dark yellow, I need to drink some water. That's what you can use this for. Keep in mind, though, that there are many prescription drugs as well as disease states that can change the color of your urine. So if something seems off and you know you've been drinking water all day, you should ask your primary care doctor about that symptom. Let's move on and talk about food. In starvation mode, there are a number of ways that alcohol can put a person's body into starvation mode. So let's put it simply. Alcohol causes low blood sugar and energy level by preventing the body from converting its energy stores into usable forms. So it's sort of like you're in this bunker and you're trying to weather out the storm, and you have all this canned food but no can opener. So you can't get to the food you have stored, and you go into starvation mode. And if you're not eating or drinking eating or drinking water either before drinking alcohol or during drinking alcohol, your body doesn't have access to virtually any energy source that it needs. And it will go into that starvation mode even worse. And I think we all know what that feels like: the hunger, the stomach growls, the nausea, the headaches, and so on. So I suggest that you eat before or while drinking, and something with carbs, water, fats, and proteins, and salt. And it will help prevent that starvation mode by giving the body the access to the energy that it needs. And it'll also help with hydration and slow down the absorption of the alcohol, which some of you may or may not want. Some of you may also be saying, hey, but beer has a ton of calories in the form of carbs. Why do I have to eat then? Here's my answer to that. Those carbs come at a cost. It comes at the cost of inhibiting the liver's ability to regulate or control blood sugar level. And two, that alcohol disrupts the absorption of important vitamins and minerals, mostly the B vitamins. So really, it's not the same as eating regular food, which is why beer calories are often called empty carbs, because they are deficient in important nutrients for the body. All right, the nausea and vomiting. And here's where things get a little interesting. And these are probably some of the more annoying and undesirable effects of alcohol and being hungover is the nausea and vomiting. So I have something for you here, so just hold on. Nausea is feeling like you're going to throw up, and vomiting is actually doing it. The major contributing factor to nausea during or after drinking is the breakdown product of alcohol called acetaldehyde that the liver creates while detoxifying the body of alcohol. Some absolute idiots at the beer companies also put this directly into some beers. It's a compound, acetaldehyde, that, in addition to a compound called NAPQI, wreaks havoc on your liver every time you drink, and is a major cause of cheek reddening, aka flushing, nausea, vomiting, headache, and a racing heart when, during, and after drinking. That is to say, acetaldehyde causes most of the symptoms you feel during a hangover. And it is critical to understand that alcohol metabolism occurs at a constant rate. So there's nothing you can do to slow down the production of acetaldehyde once alcohol is in your bloodstream. But what you might be able to do is increase the clearance or degradation of acetaldehyde from your system. And there's two major ways your body has to get rid of it all. At the liver, through a protein called aldehyde dehydrogenase, which converts into a harmless compound called acetic acid, or through a protein called glutathione, one of the liver's major protective proteins from oxidative stress and free radicals and other toxins. Glutathione, what it does is it basically binds up free radicals, which are damaging compounds, and other harmful toxins, and neutralizes them. It makes them ineffective at harming our body. And that includes binding up and controlling acetaldehyde and NAPQI. Unfortunately, though, when it does that, it comes at a cost as well. It's the reduction of the very limited supply of glutathione. And that's where most recent studies have discovered a lovely little supplement called Lcysteine. And that's what I want to talk about next. L-cysteine is an amino acid. It's a building block for protein that we all take in our diets. The theory behind how taking 1,200 milligrams of L-cysteine supplement before going to bed after a day of drinking helps with hangovers is that it's a critical compound. In fact, it is typically the most scarce, aka rate-limiting component of the body's creation of that glutathione, that protective agent of the liver. And that's the theory as to how this works. It helps to potentially, again, theory, provide more L-cysteine to form more glutathione, which can help protect us from liver toxins and oxidative threats. But that's just theory, right? Because just because it makes sense doesn't mean it's true. So we have to prove that this does that in some manner or another by doing studies, by doing randomized controlled trials. And in one randomized controlled trial, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, double-blind meaning that neither the investigators nor the study participants knew what drug they received. So 19 males were split in half and given either L-cysteine or a fake pill, aka a placebo pill, after 3 hours of drinking alcohol at a dose of 1.5 grams per kilograms of body weight. Or, to put it more simply, they were given 8 drinks in 3 hours if they weighed 170 pounds, and then asked to quantify their hangover symptom severity via a survey. The results showed that the group that received L-cysteine had lower rates of hangover-related nausea, headache, stress, and anxiety. Some critiques I have about this study is that the results are based on a very small sample size, 19 people. The L-cysteine pills were manufactured by a company that funded the study. The tablets also contain B vitamins and vitamin C, which may also cause a decrease in hangover severity symptoms. And hangover relief was collected by a subjective report, that is a survey. And finally, I think they should have used a better statistical analysis tool. They had used correlation instead of t-test. Now, again, this is all science talk. Let me just say that I will reiterate that I have no financial incentive regarding L-cysteine. And I'm just presenting this data because, it's a study that's worth presenting in the context of hangover symptoms. The other reason why I'm even presenting it in this study is because I think it probably works. I don't have proof for that, but I think it probably works. And I say that because 2 reasons. One, we use a similar compound called N-acetylcysteine to protect people from liver damage in the case of ingestion of too much Tylenol, and it seems to work well and is well tolerated, and it's FDA approved for that. 2, there's a theoretical mechanism for which why L-cysteine, or in taking an L-cysteine supplement, might work to protect the liver against damage as well as to prevent hangover symptoms. And the last thing I'll add is, and this is not at all scientific and purely anecdotal, is that I personally use the supplement, and so has my circle of friends, and we found it quite effective at reducing hangover symptoms, particularly nausea and vomiting. Anyway, here's the link to the study at the bottom here, and we'll move on to headache. If you have a headache when you wake up from drinking and you didn't fall or hit your head or any other reason, taking some ibuprofen, if assuming you're a otherwise healthy person, by following the dosing instructions on the bottle can help alleviate some of that headache. But if you do that, make sure that you take calcium carbonate, aka Tums or Rolloids, because ibuprofen also increases stomach acid production, so that can increase your risk of ulcers if you're not doing that concurrently. The other thing I'll say is do not take Tylenol, not acetaminophen. That can harm your liver when you've also been drinking. Please do not take Tylenol before, during, or after drinking. Moving on. Poor sleep. I don't have a magic way to help you improve your sleep after drinking because alcohol directly affects part of the brain involved in sleep. But I do have 3 things that may make your sleep more comfortable, and those are white noise, blackout curtains, and a humidifier. The white noise will help block out other noises like birds chirping or your neighbors. And it's sort of similar to what babies use. Actually, it is the same thing that babies use to sleep. And you can just put a white noise sound from Spotify or Amazon Music or Tidal or whatever streaming platform you use for white noise. You don't have to buy anything special. You can also buy blackout curtains that will fully block out sunlight from entering your room and help you sleep, because it turns out that sunlight is the stimulus for us to go from our sleep part of our cycle to our wake cycle. And finally, a humidifier can help keep your mouth and throat from becoming too dry while you sleep dehydrated. And that is Laureano's 6 surefire ways to prevent or reduce the symptoms of a hangover. Here are the summary slide of all the things we've covered here today. I hope you found this helpful, and I'm just going to quickly summarize at the end here for you. If you're a heavy drinker or plan on binge drinking, taking calcium carbonate tablets, aka Tums, for ulcer risk reduction is important. Drink at least 2 bottles of water worth of electrolyte solution before going to bed. Eat food and drink fluids before and or during drinking. The over-the-counter amino acid supplement called Lcysteine might help reduce nausea, vomiting, headaches. But keep in mind, this is not FDA approved, and these are only early studies that are showing this. And take some ibuprofen in the morning if you have a headache, but make sure you take it with a calcium carbonate tablet to reduce the risk of ulcer formation. And of course, sleep it off, potentially with a white noise machine or more constant sound environment and a humidifier, so you don't wake up with a super dry mouth and throat. Thanks everyone for listening and making it this far, and have a great night. And while I don't recommend drinking, if you do drink, drink responsibly.